4-hour-long podcasts. I wrote like 4 articles. It was a shit show yesterday.
Good time.
Now he's gonna make me work and go into my
Recording.
He wants the compensation for handing out the.
Yeah, no, where's my game check? You're getting paid for this. I did part of your job. I feel like I'm entitled to financial compensation.
Any fun plans for the weekends?
Studying.
This chair too. Studying.
It is final.
Studying for what? Oh yeah, you guys have that's a thing.
Couldn't be me.
I also finished my master courses yesterday.
Oh.
So no more school for me.
No más escuela. You graduate?
I still got a year and a half.
No more master classes. You should probably mute it.
Is it like right away?
Dragging you with her.
Yeah.
It's gonna just play.
I was like trying to write my whole speech yesterday, and I was about to just punch up the whole thing.
Well, it's gonna play as soon as it pops up.
Yeah, so you should probably you can still mute it.
No, I know it, but yeah, just look at me if that's not working.
What is the AKA?
Oh, grind.
What?
Bye. Get Luca's nickname.
That's like -2 points.
Unprofessionalism.
Well, if we're doing points off for
No. I know I don't have a leg to stand on. You guys be quiet. All the blah. All right.
Oh yeah.
It's still been recording this entire time, by the way.
Oh, Gregory sucks. Sorry.
Ow. My class.
Just look at me, dude. You're not gonna get points off. I'll pay attention. Just all right. What's yours?
Alright, so I'm sure you guys are well aware that I am the soccer guy in the class. I'm definitely madly in love with soccer. It's probably the #1 sport that I watch. But it hasn't always been the case for me. Next slide. Typically, I used to grow up watching soccer, and I stopped watching once I was 17 because the U.S. failed to qualify for the World Cup. It was really devastating. It was a team that was supposed to make it to the World Cup, and they let down pretty much the entire nation. So it really led me to feeling, what's the point of even watching soccer? Why am I even doing this to myself? This is something I shouldn't even be watching. So I went back to sports like football, basketball, hockey, other sports that I typically tended to enjoy, but realized that I didn't find as much love as I used to when I was watching soccer. Next slide. And that was brought a lot of love, a lot of community to me, and it's something that helped me get close to my friends, my family, and something that really meant a whole lot to me. Next slide. But I think there's a huge stigma regarding soccer in the United States as well too. I think a lot of people find it really boring, and I know a lot of people probably already are rolling their eyes right now thinking of the word soccer, or dare I even mention the word football as well too when you mention it. But that is also going without being said that I believe soccer is probably the most exciting sport to watch, and there are 3 reasons that I'm going to give for this entire slide, and that's going to be that the fact that there's a lack of ads that are being played throughout the entire of it. It's also going to be that there's a lot of game action in comparison to other sports, and the third one will be viewership that we also see around the world. So we're going to start first off when it comes down to lack of ads. How many people here probably get really annoyed when it comes down to watching an NFL game or overall just watching anything in general and seeing a million ads pop up on your feed the entire time? Same thing goes with Hulu or HBO Max, any kind of streaming service that we watch whatsoever. We get really bored and annoyed with having to see the same ad every single time. Now, if you look at the next slide, from the National Arms Race in 2013, it shows the actual amount of commercial time in comparison to each sport. If you look dead center in the middle in soccer, the number of commercials are only 20 for the amount of time that you actually get in a normal soccer game. And comparing with the clock durations as well too, you can see the amount of commercial time in comparison. You see NFL here already got 75. We're also looking at sports like basketball with 45, baseball got 42. If you're looking at soccer, a whopping 19 minutes. There's not a whole lot of action as far as advertising goes. which means there's a lot more action going on in the game, and there's a lot more reason to watch it in comparison to getting all of these ads that you're most likely not going to buy a Jeep Grand Cherokee for $60,000 living in college, you know? Now move on to the next slide as well too. My second reasoning would be, oh, why would you even watch it? Soccer is boring. It always ends in 0-0. You maybe see one goal the entire game. It gets incredibly boring watching that as well too. Next slide. I'd also mention you want to look at the amount of action in comparison to the rest of them as well too. If you look at all the action in comparison to clock durations, I even put a little bit of Subway Surfers gameplay if you actually wanted to get a little bit more understanding comparing to it all as well too. If you look at soccer, the amount of action is 50.09%. If you look at that in comparison to football with the 5.79%, all the time we're watching these people take another 40 seconds to do another play. Same thing goes with hockey. You get to see a little bit more. It's actually kind of closer to there. If you look at baseball, we're waiting almost 20, 30 seconds for a pitch to be thrown. So it can get a little bit annoying and a little bit boring. But if you look at the comparisons in clock duration as well too, you'll see if you divide this number by that number for any of these, that's the number that you'll end up getting. Soccer reigns supreme in comparison to all 5 of those sports. And now you might be also sitting here and thinking to yourself, what is constituted as action inside of a game? Now that's obviously up for debate as well too. The action that they used in this article typically tended to be gearing towards whether or not there was actual stuff happening on the field compared to off, or if there was actual gameplay happening. Next slide, please. Now, the third point that I'm going to be looking towards is the actual audience viewership. Now, the NFL does a really good job of this in the United States, gaining over 16 million viewers consistently. We've seen multiple games like the Eagles playing against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, reaching up to 44 million people. Bill Shea did an article looking at weeks in the comparison to the 2020 and 2019 season, and seeing all of these numbers, you have to admit, is pretty impressive for the United States. But if you look at the Premier League, which is the biggest league in soccer, if you look worldwide, we're almost averaging 1 billion viewers per week and TV rights sales overall in general. Now, if you wonder as well too, the big thing that is really unfortunate according to Christian Walker in the Daily Mail, only 528,000 of those numbers actually come from the United States, which is a drastic difference from the NFL. Next slide. So the question is, why would that be a possibility? And so I started looking at more articles as well too. Next slide as well too. And I started looking at a guy named Mark Bisseth. He started looking at, in 2006, all of these articles that went in between finding why it's not big for soccer in the United States. And the reason is, if you look at the athletes that we're bringing to other sports, you look at Michael Phelps, LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, even Ken Griffey Jr. in the bottom there. This was before he was on the Reds at the time in 2006 as well too. But you're looking at comparison to this top player in the United States soccer, Landon Donovan. I think these guys are bigger athletes and more prepared for other sports in comparison to the United States. And that's because we don't put our best athletes in soccer, because our teams have never been known for doing absolutely great. Typically the US is getting knocked out in the round of 16, or in 2018 not even qualifying for the World Cup to begin with as well. Next slide as well. But the big thing that gets more exciting with the United States is that we're hosting 2 big events. The Copa America happens in 2024. Big game in July. It goes to Kansas City. My twin brother and I plan on going to that as well too. And then in 2026, we are hosting the FIFA World Cup. That is quite a big achievement for the United States as well too. So that tells us that the sport is definitely growing inside of the United States. So it's another reason to start getting a little bit excited about the sport. Next slide as well too. Now I also looked at another article as well too from the Jupiler Pro League made by Andrew Vang in 2019. He tackled the issue of, well, what games do you want to play at what exact times? So he looked at the Jupiler Pro League, and he looked and saw what Belgian fans were interested in, and they saw that the games that were the most interesting between the top and the bottom were typically played at later times in comparison to the other games. So your 15th and 16th ranked teams are typically playing at 9 a.m. in comparison to your first and second if they're going to go up against each other playing around 11:30 or noon. Next slide as well too. And that leads to the point as well too with soccer. You see it as well, this is the upcoming weekend as well too. These are 2 big teams in Aston Villa and Arsenal who are playing second and third. You also see Tottenham and Newcastle who are 5th and 6th. They're playing at later times in comparison to the rest of the teams, but you still see some teams like Man City who are sprinkled in as well too. Arsenal is also top of the league. Liverpool's in 2nd place. You see them sprinkled in getting a normal game action. It's something that fans want to see, and the best part about being in the United States, especially Central Time Zone, is these are happening significantly before any other games are also happening. So it's not supposed to get in the way of watching NFL, not supposed to get in the way of watching later night basketball as well too. It's a good time for you to get in and actually watch some good sports action. Next slide as well too. Now I look back at the 17-year-old Greg, who had his last meal being potato smiles, mac and cheese, high C energy, and also all of these things with my twin brother before my 18th birthday. And I look back at this kid and think how much he has changed in the past as well too, and how much there is debates and arguments in general as well too. And we had talked about it as well too. We had talked about advertising. We had talked about We had talked about game time in comparison to the rest of the other sports. We also talked about viewership numbers. Next slide as well too. But it's also up for average numbers. We can talk about whether or not Kanye West is better than Taylor Swift. He typically is. I'm kidding. But otherwise, the Mariners also possibly winning the World Series as well too. Or we can talk about if an inky stinky Jeep Grand Cherokee is better than a Toyota Prius. The debate typically can go around too. But my biggest debate that I like to be considered is that soccer is something that everybody should be watching. And I hope that you take away at least that you don't have to become a super fan regarding the sport, but at least getting a little bit interested in being able to watch it, just so you know what's going on, because it's something that's definitely taken the world by storm. Thank you guys.